this is Niswander, and welcome to the Nowman Show. Samuel Ronan is an immigrant, originally born in Germany. His father was a soldier in the U.S. Army, and his mother was a dental assistant in Germany. His parents moved to the United States from Germany, and after several years of moving around the country, they ended up settling in Lancaster, Ohio, when he was 6 years old. And that would become the city and state of his youth and young adulthood. He graduated with honors from Lancaster High School, was a foreign exchange student in his senior year of high school at the prestigious Rotary International Organization, and was a student ambassador to Rosenheim, Germany for 10 months. Sam applied to and was accepted at Wright State University. His intentions were to receive a BA in computer science and commission into the United States Air Force. In 2008, the Great Recession, or as many of us like to say, Depression, forced Sam to put his collegiate dreams on hold. Despite his setbacks, Sam was determined to do everything he could to serve his country. He then entered the U.S. Air Force, having completed 5 years of service stationed in Okinawa, Japan, and then in Little Rock, Arkansas, where he completed his associate degree of applied sciences through the Community College of the Air Force. Sam was personally selected to be one of 2 squadron-level deployment monitors, and within 30 days of accepting his new position, he demonstrated leadership skills by spearheading the merger process of 2 squadrons comprised of over 600 members, and by helping other squadrons reduce their nonconformity rate through implementing many of the measures that were successful in his own squadron. His efforts resulted in a 97% conformity rate. In 2015-2016, he ran for Congress as a progressive Democrat in the 1st District of Ohio. In 2017, he ran for the chair of the Democratic National Committee, otherwise known as the DNC, that was vacated by Debbie Wasserman Schultz. In 2018, he again is running for Congress in the 1st District, but this time as a Republican. Sam, welcome back to the Nowman Show. Robert Edward Leahy was an operations specialist for the U.S. Navy and is currently a member of the Veterans Democratic Club of Los Angeles and the Veterans Caucus of the CDP. Gentlemen, welcome to being on the Nowman Show. So, the day we're recording this show is the 1-year anniversary of Donald Trump as President of the United States. This last year has been, I don't even know what words I would describe. How would you describe the last year, the first year of Donald Trump's presidency?
Living hell.
Living hell? So you're now, you were a Democratic candidate and now you're a Republican candidate. What was the reason for making that switch?
By speaking to people, it has allowed me to reach them on their level significantly better than when I had a D next to my name or if I would be running as an independent or anything else.
So, I know we've talked about this before that, I was born in that same area of the country, actually northeast Ohio, so I understand how the people are there in the rural areas. So, do you find that overall it is easier to talk to people about the issues, or what are you running into down there on the ground?
Interestingly, I'm running into mostly apathy. When I do get to talk about the issues, people tend to agree because people at large agree with affordable healthcare, affordable education, better jobs, especially skilled labor jobs. When you talk to rural America, working class America, and you start talking about college degrees, there is that bit of defensiveness because for years they've been ridiculed and mocked and looked down upon because they don't have degrees. But you know what they have? They have the ability to fix cars, wire houses, run plumbing. They have the abilities and skills that are necessary to keep civilization going.
Yeah.
And so when you start talking about a jobs program and an education program that integrates skilled labor, like electricians, like plumbers, like construction workers and all that kind of stuff, all of a sudden there's that little perk. There's that, oh, he's talking about me and my people again. Even though we're talking about the same thing, universal education, we're integrating, we're speaking the language of the people who have been left out the most. And that responsiveness I have found increasing ever more. Unfortunately, though, on the other hand of that spectrum, I'm finding more and more voter apathy. Nothing's getting done. The Democrats are ruining this. The Republicans are ruining that. My vote doesn't matter. Why should I even bother? I don't vote. I don't sign things. I don't care. There's a lot of that going on. A lot more of that now than there was last year.
Oh,
and I think
really?
that's the biggest burden.
Wow. So people are just willing to like go with the flow of just whatever happens. They don't really feel inspired to be more proactive.
I wouldn't even say that. I feel like they've given into despair, that they can't do anything, that they have given up hope. And, it's ironic because hope and change is what Obama ran on, and that's what's been destroyed. Now, I'm not going to say that to lambast Obama. What I'm saying is that our government, the federal government, and politics in general, the political theater that has permeated our country, has drained the American citizenry of hope in the democratic process. And it's up to us, people like me, people like Robert, people like yourself, to convey that message of involvement and being active and participating is not only viable, it's necessary, and that it is the patriotic and American thing to do. For whatever reason, Republicans and their propaganda machine have a monopoly on patriotism. If you're not for the military, you're anti-patriotic. If you're not for guns, you're anti-patriotic. Wrong. If you're for common sense, if you're for civility, if you're for humanity and community and common sense and common decency, that is patriotism. That's what we had in the 50s and 60s. That's when we had the strongest economy and the envy of the world in both medicine and education. We put a man on the moon during that time, that golden age of America. That's because we believed in people. We had a community. We had that sense of one out of many one. That is what we fought for. And now we're fighting for ourselves. It is selfish. Our society, our complete culture, our ethos is very selfish. And in the literal sense, what is the number one phrase used? It's all about number one. Nobody's going to look out for me. That there's a difference between looking out for somebody else and supporting your neighbor, your countrymen, your friends, and your family. And what's happened is that has been twisted and perverted and just manipulated into something that it's not. Having compassion is being treated as being a communist in the 1950s, that evil socialism is free handouts. No. Evil socialism is snowplows, is streets, it's running water and electricity. It's the United States Armed Forces.
Yes.
I mean, my God, you want to talk about socialism? Look at military, Rob.
Well, our U.S. military is really the biggest socialism organization on the planet.
And most successful at that. I mean, if it wasn't for the military, I wouldn't have health insurance. I've broken both wrists, both ankles while active duty, and I didn't have to pay a single penny out of pocket to get fixed up.
And I was talking earlier about why can't we get Medicare for all? Even the people in Washington, the very people that are saying to you we can't afford it, actually have some form of Medicare for all, which is probably one of the reasons why Bernie Sanders is a big advocate for it, because he understands that. So we were talking about the apathy of people in Ohio in your district. So what is it exactly that you're coming across as you talk to a diversity of people there?
Unfortunately, it's apathy in general. People don't want to participate. People say that my vote doesn't matter. It's not something I do. It's something I don't. That bothers me, not something I'm interested in. And it's unfortunate because a lot of the people that say that are some of the people who are in fact most affected by politics, right? I have elderly couples saying that they're not interested in politics or that they approve of the current Republican administration, and they are going out of their way to remove Medicare, the eligibility to draw from Social Security, raising the caps and stuff like that. That is negatively impacting the most vulnerable. And then on top of that, you have young people who just don't care, right? Yeah. And then you have people in the middle class that are just, well, I already got what I needed, so I don't really care what happens next. I have my car, and I have my home, I have my family. And that's really the unfortunate thing. But it's about that whole sense of community. We were the greatest nation on earth when we believed in community, when we believed in working together and supporting one another as neighbors, as countrymen, right? Now we've emerged and devolved into this sense of self. we are a selfish nation now. It's all about number one, me, me, me. It's about what can I get, right? Nobody's going to take care of me other than me. And that isn't to say that others should take care of you and you should do nothing for it. It's that in the community, we all have a role, we have a part to play. We all have strengths and we all have weaknesses, and we support one another. And when we did that, when we were that country, we put a man on the moon. We had the best healthcare system in the world, the best education in the world, the strongest economy in the world, right? The best trained, best funded military in the world. We were the envy of the world for a reason, because we led by example. And now we have fallen the same way of any other empire, be it the British Empire, the Roman Empire, Spanish, French Empire. You pick one. They've always fallen due to the hubris of its citizenry, of its culture, of its society. It's become devoid of compassion. It's all about consumption and wealth and overcoming each other in spite of each other.
Yes.
And that's where we found ourselves. And that's what I see at the door more than anything else. But those conversations that I do have, I do get into policy. I talk about the future and what's going on in our country, Republican, Democrat, or otherwise. When I have those conversations and I truly reach voters, I know there's a chance for the future, that there are people out there who have not yet given up. But for the most part, I think, unfortunately, especially with this shutdown, the Women's March notwithstanding, I think more people have given in to despair, given up hope in their democracy, than are willing to fight for it and to participate in it.
So do you feel that perhaps your greatest role that you can play right now is being optimistic and sharing solutions with people in this despair, because people feel like there aren't any? I mean, for instance, other systems that currently exist around the world have been demonized because of what seems to be the return of McCarthyism, to make people think that socialism is basically totalitarianism at a time when that doesn't even exist in Europe, let alone even Russia anymore. There's no totalitarian leaders really right now there. That was in the past, right? Plus, there's also this lack of understanding, as economist Richard Wolff says, of the different types of examples of socialism. There isn't just one socialism. It's a very diverse topic, and there's systems are as different as one country is to another.
Right.
So you even come from, your family came from a country that was basically a National Socialist country. It still is. So you can bring that kind of inspiration to people. But how can you talk about, let's say, something like, as we talked about when you were here in LA and we were hanging out, we talked about the use of words like democratize enterprises, or like what they're doing in the UK right now with the Labour Party, democratize the economy. How do you think those kinds of things would go over with these same people that might still be afraid of a socialism from another time and another place?
So there's a couple questions wrapped in that one. I'll try to address them all at once. The optimism with how to reach people and how do we express different forms of economy and government all at the same time. Optimism isn't the correct word. It's more so showing people that it can be done. That's not necessarily optimistic. That's providing a path through personal experience. If a 28-year-old veteran from nowhere, Ohio, can get on the stage of CNN and tell political heavyweights to their face precisely what they did wrong and why, and how that'll actually affect their chances of leading the party into a prosperous future, then so can anyone else. It's about learning the rules. It's about playing and participating in the game, and it's about putting in the work and hard effort that is required to be successful. That is the American dream. That is the tenacity of the American spirit. So to push that forward into how do we achieve these different forms of economy, how do we undemonize, I know there's a better word for that, but how do we bring back words such as socialism and democratization of things? Quite frankly, you can't bring back communism, you can't bring back socialism. Those words have already been turned into slur words, just like if I said the F word right here and now. There's no way that other than in the context of using it as an example, could I possibly use it in a positive sense, right?
Yes.
Socialism and communism in the United States of America among the populace has been destroyed. It will take generations to fix. Just like the F word in all reality was never such a slur word. That was a fairly recent thing. In fact, in Germany, the only curse word that is there is actually, ironically enough, damn. Go figure.
Wow.
Anyway, the point is, you don't talk about words that automatically put people on the defensive. You talk about words that people understand, right?
Right. That's
Democratic
right.
Socialism is a relatively new word that hasn't had a chance to be demonized yet, but it's one that incorporates another.
Wow.
So what do we talk about? We talk about people. We talk about American. If America runs off of values and patriotism, then that's how we have to express things. We have to talk about American healthcare, American education, American energy, American this, American that. Because patriotism is what resonates with all Americans, period. Liberal, Democrat, military, not military, pro-war, anti-war. If you are in the United States of America, you are a patriot. You believe in your country, and that is the string that is tugged upon your heart whenever someone wants to elicit an emotional response towards your country. And that's what I've done. I talk about citizens pay instead of UBI. I talk about American healthcare instead of universal healthcare. I talk about an American education system. I talk about bringing back skilled labor. I talk about bringing back jobs that are going to be permanent, modernizing our infrastructure, a 21st century New Deal, something that gives this image of the future, 21st century, but something that also brings ties to the past during one of the greatest economic times of our nation's history, the New Deal. FDR is a very respected president on both sides of the aisle, same as Eisenhower, and both presidents had arguably similar policies. I mean, give or take something here or there. But Eisenhower taxed corporations at 93%, and FDR gave us the New Deal, which created the middle class. One set the stage for the other. And during that generation, that 30 years of leadership, we were a prosperous nation for all. Now, granted, I will give concession to the fact that we had horrific amounts of sexism and abject racism. Yes, that is a fact. That is not something I intend to whitewash or ignore when I discuss the 1950s and 60s. But as a community, as a society, and as an economy, as a government, as a civilization on the rise, that was our pinnacle. And we can achieve that again now, on top of the fact of our social equality that we've acquired. Right? Socially liberal, fiscally conservative. We have to get back to our roots on what those words mean, right? Classical conservatism and liberalism are essentially the same exact thing.
That's what they become anyway. Yeah.
Right.
So
and that's what we need to get back to is I guess what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and understanding that that there's different parts of the country where it's like we have multiple countries in one country. So that's an issue as well. And I know you and Robert both come from a military background. How, Robert, you start with you. How did the military influence the way you look at the world right now?
Well, it definitely changed your perspective. There was many days where I watched the news, watched what was going on, and perspectives definitely changed. You go many places around the world, and it's not good old America the way we were raised.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking. You come back and you want to change. You want to make here a better place because. At this point, I'd say, we've definitely almost become a third world country ourselves.
And that's a problem in and of itself. And I was just thinking when you were talking, it's a brilliant reference going back to the past and how we can bring some of that into the current framework. But the reality is, like for instance, as there's been a lot of industrialization and factory jobs and that kind of thing in that part of the country. I have lots of family, both sides of the family that worked in factories and those kinds of environments. And we haven't seen the ultimate for automation yet. And that's a reality that didn't exist in the past that is about to unveil in the present. So when you're talking about the patriotism and bringing back jobs and things like that, it will get to a point, don't you think, that where people are going to want action. They're not going to want talk anymore. They're going to want action, because people voted for Donald Trump because they heard something they liked, right? And they also they know what happened to their jobs from trade deals like NAFTA, which was not associated with Donald Trump or Bernie Sanders. It was associated with the Clintons. So how in the present day do you address this issue, because automation is going to take away a lot more of these jobs that could exist for them? And either one of you can answer that question.
Say, Rob, why don't you start that one off and I'll pick up.
All right, well, we definitely got to recreate some jobs here in America, and it's been a very interesting year, 1 year of Donald Trump presidency, and that's really a tough question to answer. I did want to backtrack on something else though regarding the socialism. A lot of people still have that negative connotation on it because they still associate it with Marxism.
That's right.
But socialism very much is alive even here. Our highways, Medicare, the military, like we talked about.
Social security.
Social security. So that public transportation. We very much
libraries.
We very much have a lot of socialism alive here, and people don't even realize it. They just stick with that status quo negative connotation.
Yeah, so a lot of it really has to do with media educating. And Sam, and I wanted to get your view on this too. Maybe we can talk about it another time as well to elaborate, because it's a big, long subject. There's some interesting developments in the UK right now with the left wing of the Labour Party there. They, from what I can see, they have hundreds of thousands of people, mainly young people, have joined the left wing of the Labour Party. They also have this massive document called the Manifesto, which is focused on for the many and not the few, democratizing the economy. And there's a big portion in it called the Alternative Models of Ownership, from a historical context that Jeremy Corbyn was involved in the late 70s that got shut down by trickle-down economics. He's bringing that back in to the discussion. And so, plus there's also independent media that is very organized in educating the general populace about what they're not getting from the mainstream media. So all of that's working together to create this surge of what looks like a movement politically to the left to address the needs of the many and not the few. What do you think about borrowing certain ideas from that in this country, even in your campaign as you talk to people?
Well, I mean, and that ties into what Rob alluded to with, how socialism still has this negative connotation. It talks, getting media and politics to, I don't like the term swinging to the left, because again, you're causing that divide, you're causing that contrast, but at the same time, you can't discuss politics without putting some sort of marker to it, some sort of direction.
But it's a full spectrum. It's a graph. When you look, it's like anything.
Exactly.
Like in economics, you have a graph. It goes from the left to the right, right?
Exactly.
So you have to look at it from that angle too.
Exactly. So when we talk about this spectrum of political belief and ideology, it's absolutely something I've been bringing into my campaign. And like you were saying with independent media, the problem is in Europe, it's parliamentary. The principal strength, the foundation of government in Europe is parliamentary in nature. Whereas in the United States, it's one way or the other. And that's how our country has been since day one. You had, the Boston Tea Party, the revolutionaries, and you had the loyalists. That's what you had. You had the revolutionaries and the loyalists. From day one, we've had a split, a duopoly. And then it became the Whigs, and I forget who the other ones were. But you get the idea. From year after year, the Civil War, that's a half. the war in World War I. We had slaves who had just been freed for one generation being drafted into the military and still being treated like second, third class citizens, right?
Absolutely.
So,
well, our country was built on a genocide and enslavement of people, basically.
exactly.
You
And,
know,
and don't
and
forget
that's an
the
issue.
genocide.
That's an issue that really U.S. Americans need to grapple with that, and also try to understand how that pertains to their. Man, there's so much we could talk about. We do have to wrap
yeah.
this up, unfortunately, today. We can bring you back another time.
Yeah. Well, I did
let's
want
have
to hit
some.
on the the jobs thing, the UBI and the jobs thing, the automation. That was one I really wanted to hit if I could.
Well, let's do that in the closing statement. Why don't we do that, and
Perfect.
start with Robert for a closing statement, and then we'll go to Sam.
We just got so many topics that
I know.
we wanted to talk to. You know, net neutrality was one we were hoping to talk about. So many other topics, military-industrial complex. So much to talk about, and it's unfortunately we got to wrap it up.
Yeah,
so.
let's do a panel discussion in the near future. Maybe when we get Sam on, and we can do that. Sam, closing comments.
Yeah. So once again, thank you for having me on, Rob. It's always a pleasure. The thing about our future is it is in our hands. And the thing about the future is we have to learn to work together as a society like we did in the past. Civilization exists because we work together. UBI, automation, that's about improving society. It's about giving more back than what we had before. And automation is a natural byproduct of human ingenuity. What we have to do is make sure that when we become automatic, we don't lose sight of people and humanity in general. So there's still going to be jobs, there's still going to be needs and services that are required that human beings are going to have to fulfill. No robot, no machine, no program can ever replace. And that's where the UBI comes into play, to offset that technological advancement.
And that's universal basic income you're talking about.
Correct. Citizens pay, universal basic income, whatever you want to call it. But in general, yes, I would love to come back on. But as always, it's a pleasure to be on here, and I look forward to continuing this conversation in the very near future.
Absolutely. Let's work on that. And thank you, Robert, so much. It's great having you here. Thank you, Sam, for being with us today, and we'll work on getting panel discussion going here soon. So this is Niswander, and you've been watching the Nowman Show with Samuel Ronan and Robert Leahy. And always be present now.
The past is gone, the future is yet to come, it's now, right now. The present is here, the future is near, but it's right now, you know. Being with you makes the body complete, so keep the body moving, ensure your happy feet. At the end of the night, when all is said and done, I wanna know I did the right thing.